Leaked proposals for peace in Ukraine are an extraordinary victory for the Kremlin and Xi Jinping. What is Donald Trump playing at? Follow this channel, Channel TV, for more updates on international news. Putin was losing badly. Now, he can't believe his luck. Leaked proposals for peace in Ukraine are an extraordinary victory for the Kremlin and Xi Jinping. What is Donald Trump playing at? The newly leaked 28-point peace framework for Ukraine reads less like diplomacy and more like dictated surrender. Russia's seizure of Crimea would be formally recognized, and Kyiv would have to surrender other occupied regions, slash the size of its army, and also give up all long-range weapons. In other words, the one country that has not invaded anyone is to be disarmed as if it were the threat, while the serial aggressor keeps its conquests. On top of that, leaked versions speak of halting most U.S. military aid, recognizing Russian as a Ukrainian state language, and granting official status to the Moscow-linked Orthodox Church, all classic levers of influence for the Kremlin inside Ukraine. The package looks less like a balanced bargain than a Kremlin wish list laundered through Washington. For anyone who remembers the 1994 Budapest Memorandum, under which the US, the UK, and Russia gave Ukraine security assurances in exchange for its nuclear arsenal, this represents a remarkable U-turn. Those assurances included respect for Ukraine's sovereignty and borders, and a pledge to refrain from the threat or use of force against it. Today, instead of upholding those commitments, two of the original signatories are effectively asking Kyiv to ratify its own dismemberment. International assurances and treaties can mean little or nothing once the signatories decide it is no longer in their interest to comply. Strategically, the timing is even stranger. Behind the facade of Fortress Russia, the war and sanctions have pushed Moscow into stagnation. Growth forecasts have collapsed, reserves are being run down, labor shortages are biting, and the public appears to be tiring of the war. So the war economy is brittle, and the main strategy of the regime seems to be to outlast Western patience. In other words, Putin is not dictating from a position of strength, but from a corner that he has painted himself into, economically strained, demographically weakened, dependent on China, and trapped in a costly war he cannot afford to lose, but does not know how to win. For the West, it should be a no-brainer. Keep helping Ukraine push back the Russian army and maintain pressure on Moscow, rather than rewarding Putin with territory and a neutered Ukraine. Trump is often accused of transactionalism, as if he is alone among world leaders in seeking a good bargain for his country. In reality, however, almost every head of government is transactional most of the time. That is part of the job description. They would be failing their countries if they were not. The traditional way is simply to pretend that it is not happening. From that perspective, the Trumpian method is at times, believe it or not, more honest. He says the quiet part out loud. Where he oversteps is in treating deals with despotic thugs much like deals with democratic allies. Team Putin is not just another counterparty. Treating him as one is not only morally unsavory, it is bad business for the United States. It also hands Trump's critics in Europe an excuse to distance themselves from Washington just when the U.S. president had an opening to do the opposite. He had enormous latent goodwill among those Europeans who have welcomed a challenge to progressive groupthink and moralism. By misplaying his Ukraine card, apparently driven by a fixation on a Ukrainian mineral deal, he is squandering much of that capital. The stage was set for Trump to be the Reagan of our time, a champion not only of regained economic freedom, but of the democracy that underpins any functioning market economy.